It started with silence. Captain Adrien Hale stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching the stars flicker through the reinforced glass of Outpost Epsilon. No signal, no comms, no static. The only connection to the Earth he once knew had been severed. It wasn't a gradual breakdown, it was instantaneous. One moment, he was listening to a transmission from command. The next, there was nothing. He didn't need confirmation to understand what had happened. The Akraal Empire had found Earth. The emptiness hit him harder than any weapon could. Earth was gone. The bustling cities, the endless landscapes, the billions of people gone. Vaporized in an instant by the Akraal, leaving nothing but void. Adrien closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against the cold glass. He wasn't a man prone to emotions. Years of service had burned that out of him. But now, in this final hour, a single thought screamed through the hollowness: I am the last. A faint chime broke his reverie, followed by the mechanical voice of the station's AI, Vera. Captain Hale, Vera said, her tone almost too calm for the situation. Incoming fleet detected on the far side of the planet. Signature matches Akraal Armada configuration. Adrien clenched his fists. Of course, the Akraal wouldn't stop with Earth. They were relentless in their conquest of the galaxy, leaving no traces of resistance behind. He turned away from the viewport, pushing the grief down deep inside where it couldn't touch him. It was time to act. How long until they arrive? He asked, his voice hard. Estimates suggest the Armada will reach Epsilon within 48 hours. Initial force projection is approximately 50 capital ships, supported by smaller assault units. Adrien did the mental math. 50 ships. For one man. He'd been stationed at Outpost Epsilon alone for months, a result of the Terran Defense Initiative spreading their forces thin across countless outposts to protect vital locations. This backwater outpost wasn't supposed to be important, but the Akraal apparently disagreed. Maybe they just wanted to ensure that no human remained, no matter how remote. Activate defensive protocols. Bring all systems online and begin weapon priming, he ordered. Prepare for full planetary lockdown. Vera acknowledged, and Adrien moved with purpose, heading toward the armory. The dull hum of the station beneath his feet became more pronounced as Epsilon shifted into war mode. His hands brushed against the familiar steel of the walls. As he passed, he had been here long enough to know every inch of this place. Every corridor, every system, every hidden cache of supplies. He had one job now: hold them off for as long as possible. The armory door slid open with a hiss, revealing row after row of cutting-edge Terran military tech. Plasma rifles, exosuits, combat drones, everything he could need to fight off a small army. But against an Akraal Armada, even with all this gear, the odds were laughable. They wouldn't send 50 ships unless they were serious. He had to be smarter than them. He had to outthink and outfight. Adrien selected a high-density plasma rifle from the wall, securing it to the magnetic clip on his back, before donning his exosuit. The suit's servos hummed as it activated, syncing with his nervous system, enhancing his strength and reflexes tenfold. He flexed his hands, feeling the suit respond perfectly to his movements. The Terran Defense Initiative had made sure that every soldier out on the fringes had the best tech available. Too bad that wouldn't be enough. He grabbed a tactical helmet, sliding it over his head. The heads-up display blinked to life, immediately syncing with Vera's systems, giving him a readout of the station's status. "Vera," he said, his voice a little more hoarse than he expected. "Send an encrypted message to any remaining Terran outposts within range. Let them know Epsilon is about to be overrun. Then disable all external communications." "Understood, Captain," Vera replied. Adrien knew there would be no response. Even if there were other outposts left, they were likely faring no better. But it didn't matter. His job was to keep fighting, to hold the line, no matter the cost. 48 hours came and went faster than Adrien expected. The Akraal Armada appeared on the edge of the planet's atmosphere, a fleet of ships so massive they blotted out the stars. Epsilon's defense grid activated, sending pulses of energy through the shield generators, surrounding the outpost in a protective dome of light. But it wouldn't last forever. Adrien stood on the command bridge, staring at the holo display as the ships slowly descended. Vera monitored the enemy fleet's movements, plotting their trajectory as they approached the outpost. "Captain," Vera said, "the Akraal are deploying ground troops. Scans indicate high concentrations of their infantry units. Expected arrival at outpost perimeter in approximately 1 hour." Adrien exhaled slowly. He had time. Time to make sure every weapon system was at full power, every trap was in place. If this was going to be his last stand, he was going to make sure the Akraal regretted it. "Let them come," he muttered to himself, turning toward the control panel. He began activating the automated turrets along the outpost's exterior, watching as the twin-barreled plasma cannons powered up, their deadly barrels swiveling toward the sky. Mines, set to proximity detonation, were scattered across the landscape outside, invisible to the naked eye. He had even reprogrammed a few of the construction drones to act as sentry units, equipped with makeshift railguns and explosive charges. If they were going to take him, they'd pay for every inch. As he worked, memories of Earth crept into his mind, unbidden. He could see his family, his friends, everyone he had lost. The streets of New London, the last bastion of human culture, now nothing but dust. He shook his head, banishing the thoughts. There was no time for that. His grief, his anger, they were his fuel now. He couldn't afford to break. An hour later, the first Akraal drop ships pierced the atmosphere. Adrien watched as the hulking metal beasts descended, their thrusters glowing bright against the dark sky. They moved with precision, landing just outside the perimeter of the outpost. As the drop ship's doors slid open, dozens of Akraal soldiers poured out. Hulking creatures, standing over 8 feet tall, with exoskeletons like living tanks. Their dark red eyes glowed with malice, their bodies encased in thick, organic armor. Each one carried a weapon designed to vaporize anything in its path. Adrien took a deep breath, his heart hammering in his chest. This was it. The first wave charged, their heavy feet pounding the ground. Adrien triggered the mines. Explosions ripped through the air, sending Akraal soldiers flying in all directions. The turrets opened fire, beams of plasma slicing through the alien ranks, cutting them down like wheat before the scythe. But the Akraal kept coming. Adrien raised his plasma rifle, taking aim at the advancing horde. He squeezed the trigger, sending a stream of molten energy into the nearest soldier. The creature roared in pain, its armor sizzling as it collapsed to the ground. Another took its place, and another. For every one he killed, it seemed like 10 more appeared. But Adrien wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The battle raged for hours. Adrien's suit was drenched in sweat, his muscles aching from the constant strain. The outpost defenses were beginning to falter, the turrets overheating, the shields weakening under the relentless assault. But the Akraal hadn't broken through. Not yet. "Captain," Vera's voice crackled in his ear, "enemy reinforcements detected. Additional drop ships en route." Adrien grimaced, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Of course they are," he muttered. He checked his ammo reserves running low, but still enough to keep fighting for a while longer. Then something unexpected happened. A blip appeared on his HUD, a signal. Faint, but unmistakable. "Vera," Adrien said, frowning. "What is that?" "Unknown," Vera replied. "The signal is originating from beneath the planet's surface." Adrien's mind raced. There shouldn't be anything down there. Epsilon was a remote outpost, built on a barren rock. But if there was something beneath them? He didn't have time to think about it. The next wave was coming. Adrien's rifle fired again, its energy scorching the Akraal front line. They screamed as they fell, the thunderous echoes of his plasma bursts drowned out by the roar of their continued advance. For every Akraal soldier that fell, another surged forward, and his defensive position grew more precarious by the minute. But that blip, it hadn't left his mind. As the Akraal pressed closer, his thoughts swirled around that signal. Epsilon had been designated as a barren outpost, unimportant except for its strategic location between Earth and the deeper galactic sectors. The planet wasn't supposed to hold anything special, and yet the signal was there, coming from below the surface. It pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. It didn't fit any known Terran signatures, and Vera's sensors couldn't identify it. His tactical instincts told him to ignore it, to focus on the imminent threat. But a different voice whispered in his mind. What if that signal holds the key to survival? He snapped out of his thoughts as Vera's voice cut through the chaos. Shields are at 20%, Captain. External defenses are nearing critical overload. Adrien ducked as a plasma blast streaked past him, narrowly missing his helmet. He needed to decide, and fast. Either he continued holding the line until the shields collapsed, or he took the chance to investigate the signal. Gritting his teeth, Adrien made his decision. Vera, divert power from non-essential systems. Buy us as much time as you can. I'm heading to the lower levels. Understood, Captain. Warning. The Akraal ground forces are approaching critical mass. Your absence may compromise station defense. I know. I'm banking on that signal being more important than I thought. He fired one more shot into the Akraal ranks, downing a massive soldier who had pushed too close to the entrance. Then, without looking back, he sprinted toward the interior of the outpost, leaving the automated turrets to handle the rest. As he descended the steel corridors, his heart pounded in time with his footsteps. He couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this signal was no accident, that it had been waiting for him to find it. The lower levels of Outpost Epsilon were a maze of utility tunnels, old storage rooms, and maintenance shafts. No one had been down here in months, not since the station had gone into automated mode, and the air smelled of stagnant metal. Adrien's helmet lights flickered on as the dim passageways stretched before him. The signal was growing stronger. Vera, where's the exact source of that signal? He asked, his voice echoing slightly in the narrow corridor. Signal source is located approximately 150 meters below the outpost foundation. No registered installations or records indicate the presence of any subterranean structures. How deep is this rock? Adrien asked, knowing the outpost was built on an asteroid-like planetoid, not a fully formed planet. The crust beneath the outpost is approximately 300 meters deep. However, the signal appears to be emanating from a void or chamber beneath the surface. A hidden chamber, deep beneath the outpost. What the hell was this place? Adrien moved quickly, following the path that Vera highlighted on his HUD. The corridors led him deeper into the heart of the outpost, past the lowest point of the structure. The door in front of him slid open with a hiss, revealing a lift shaft that hadn't been used in years. He stepped inside, gripping his rifle tightly as the platform descended into the darkness below. The further down he went, the more the signal pulsed, as if it were alive. His heart raced, anticipation mixing with a growing sense of dread. This wasn't just some random anomaly, it had a purpose. The lift came to a halt with a shudder, and Adrien stepped out into what could only be described as a vault. Unlike the industrial and utilitarian design of the outpost above, the walls here were smooth, made of an alloy he didn't recognize. They shimmered faintly in the dim light of his helmet, like a black pearl reflecting an unseen ocean. In the center of the vault, embedded in the floor, was an obelisk. It was massive, standing at least 15 feet tall, its surface etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly. The signal was coming from this monolith, steady and rhythmic like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Adrien approached cautiously, his rifle raised. Vera, any idea what this thing is? I am unable to identify the material or origin of the structure. The signal, however, appears to be a form of communication. Unknown language detected. Communication? Adrien's stomach twisted. Was this some kind of ancient tech, buried long before humans arrived in this sector? Or something far worse, an alien device left behind, waiting for the right moment? As he circled the obelisk, he noticed a panel on its base, slightly recessed, as if it was meant to be opened. His instincts screamed at him to leave it alone, but his mind was already piecing together the possibilities. This outpost had been built on this location for a reason. Maybe Command didn't even know why, but someone somewhere had known about this. He knelt down, examining the panel. It didn't seem to have any obvious mechanisms, no latches or handles, just a smooth surface, with more of those strange symbols. As he brushed his fingers across it, the obelisk hummed softly. Then, before he could react, a section of the floor next to it slid open with a soft hiss. Adrien jumped back, rifle aimed, but no enemies emerged. Instead, what he saw made his breath catch. A chamber lay beneath the floor, filled with sleek, angular machinery, unlike anything he had ever seen. Its design was almost human, but there was a strangeness to it, an odd familiarity coupled with a deep alien intelligence. In the center of the chamber was what looked like a stasis pod, its surface fogged over with condensation. Something or someone was inside. Vera, what the hell am I looking at? There is no known Terran or Akraal technology that matches this design. I suggest extreme caution, Captain. He didn't need the AI to tell him that. His rifle stayed trained on the pod as he moved closer. Every fiber of his being was on edge. Was this a trap? A remnant of an ancient civilization? Or something much more recent and much more dangerous? His gauntlet brushed over a control panel embedded in the side of the pod. The lights on the machinery flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow over the chamber. The fog on the pod's surface began to clear, revealing a figure inside. A human figure. Adrien's blood ran cold. Inside the pod was a man, dressed in what looked like a Terran military uniform, though it was of a design he didn't recognize. The man was motionless, eyes closed, suspended in a state of deep stasis. How long had he been down here? How was any of this possible? Vera, is this man alive? Life signs are present but minimal. The stasis pod appears to have maintained his vitals over an extended period. I cannot estimate how long he has been here. Adrien stood frozen, staring at the figure. This changed everything. Whoever this man was, he was part of something much larger, something hidden beneath the surface of Epsilon. The Akraal Armada closing in on the outpost suddenly made a grim sort of sense. They weren't here for Adrien. They weren't here for the outpost. They were here for him. The distant rumble of an explosion shook the ground beneath his feet, reminding Adrien that time was running out. He had maybe minutes before the outpost defenses were overwhelmed and the Akraal broke through. He needed to act fast. He activated the control panel on the pod, initiating the reawakening sequence. The machinery hummed louder, the lights growing brighter as the stasis field began to disengage. Adrien stepped back, his rifle still ready, though part of him already knew that this man wasn't an enemy. He couldn't be. A soft hiss escaped the pod as the cover slid open, revealing the figure inside. The man's eyes fluttered open, blinking slowly as if he were emerging from a long dream. His gaze locked onto Adrien, and for a moment there was nothing but silence between them. Then the man spoke, his voice hoarse and barely above a whisper. "What year is it?" Adrien's grip tightened on his rifle. "Who are you?" The man coughed, his voice growing stronger. "Captain James Mallory, Terran Defense Initiative." He paused, his brow furrowing as if trying to remember. "Where am I?" Adrien swallowed, his mind racing. Mallory. The name was familiar, but he couldn't place it. "You're on Outpost Epsilon, but we don't have time. The Akraal are about to overrun this place. Why are you here? What's going on?" Mallory's eyes widened, realization dawning on his face. "The Akraal?" He tried to sit up, wincing as his muscles protested. "We're too late." "Too late for what?" Adrien demanded. Mallory looked at him, his expression grim. "There's something buried here, something they've been hunting for centuries, and if they get their hands on it." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Mallory's words hung in the air, heavy with the unspoken threat. Something ancient, something the Akraal had been searching for across the galaxy, was buried beneath Outpost Epsilon. And now, with the Akraal forces closing in, they were on the verge of getting it. Adrien helped Mallory to his feet, the man's muscles stiff from what had to be decades, maybe even centuries, of stasis. Mallory grimaced in pain, but pushed himself upright, shaking off the grogginess. His eyes flickered over the strange vault, as if he were reacquainting himself with a long-forgotten battlefield. "What is it?" Adrien asked, unable to keep the urgency from his voice. "What's buried here?" Mallory took a deep breath, his gaze hardening. "It's called the Catalyst. We found it during the early days of the Terran expansion. Back then, we didn't know what it was. The research teams thought it was some kind of advanced power source, a weapon maybe, but we never got to finish studying it." Adrien's stomach tightened. "What happened?" Mallory's face darkened. "The Akraal found us. We barely had time to seal the catalyst away before they attacked. My unit was ordered to hide it, to ensure that no one could use it. But we underestimated how badly the Akraal wanted it. They've been hunting for it ever since." "So, this outpost was built on top of it," Adrien murmured. "They weren't just using Epsilon as a waypoint. They were guarding something." Mallory nodded. "And now the Akraal are here to claim it. If they get their hands on the catalyst, they'll have enough power to tear through every human defense in the galaxy. We won't stand a chance." Adrien's mind raced, connecting the dots. The Akraal Armada wasn't just a random strike force, it was an invasion force with a singular purpose. They weren't after the outpost itself, they were after the catalyst. And if the outpost fell, the galaxy's most dangerous weapon would be in their hands. "How do we stop them?" Adrien asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be simple. Mallory's eyes flicked to the obelisk, then back to Adrien. "We need to destroy it. It's the only way to keep it out of their hands." Adrien felt a cold weight settle in his gut. "Destroy it? How?" "There's a failsafe built into the outpost," Mallory explained. "A self-destruct sequence. It'll wipe out the catalyst and everything within a 100-kilometer radius. But we need to reach the control center and activate it before the Akraal break through." Adrien's pulse quickened. The plan was straightforward, but it was also a death sentence. If they triggered the self-destruct, there would be no escape. They'd be obliterated along with the outpost and the catalyst. He clenched his jaw. It didn't matter. If it meant stopping the Akraal from getting their hands on that weapon, it was a sacrifice he was willing to make. "All right," Adrien said, gripping his rifle tighter. "Let's move." The lift ride back to the upper levels was tense, the groaning of the old machinery echoing in the silence. Adrien kept his eyes on the rapidly approaching floors, mentally preparing for what awaited them. Mallory, despite his weakened state, stood beside him, his posture rigid, eyes sharp. "Why didn't Command know about this?" Adrien asked, breaking the silence. Mallory shook his head. "It was classified at the highest level. The only ones who knew about the catalyst were the top brass and my unit. After we went dark, Command probably assumed the secret died with us." Adrien absorbed that. It made sense, especially with how remote and seemingly unimportant Epsilon had always been. They were standing on top of a relic, a weapon so powerful that even the Terran military didn't fully understand it, and now the Akraal were about to claim it for themselves. "Shields at 5%, Vera's voice cut through his thoughts, cold and precise. "Warning, Akraal forces have breached the outer defenses. Hostile presence detected within the station." Adrien's stomach dropped. They were running out of time. "We'll have to fight our way to the control center," Mallory said, his voice steady despite the grim news. "You ready?" Adrien gave a sharp nod. "Always." The lift doors opened with a metallic clang, revealing the chaos above. The once pristine halls of Outpost Epsilon were now a war zone. Sparks flew from ruptured conduits, the walls scorched by plasma fire, and the distant screams of the outpost automated turrets filled the air. Akraal soldiers stormed through the corridors, their massive forms towering over the wreckage. Adrien raised his rifle without hesitation, his targeting system locking onto the nearest Akraal. The creature let out a guttural snarl as Adrien fired, plasma rounds ripping through its armored chest. Mallory, despite his earlier condition, moved with the fluidity of a trained soldier, taking up a fallen rifle and gunning down the Akraal nearest him. They advanced quickly, moving from cover to cover, cutting down any Akraal that dared cross their path. But Adrien could feel the weight of their task pressing down on him. For every enemy they killed, 2 more seemed to take its place. And all the while, the catalyst pulsed in the back of his mind, a silent reminder of what was at stake. "Control center is 2 levels up," Vera chimed in. "Be advised, significant enemy presence detected." Adrien reloaded his rifle, glancing at Mallory. "How are you holding up?" Mallory grinned, though there was no humor in it. "Better than I should be." They pushed forward, weaving through the maze of corridors, their progress marked by the bodies of fallen Akraal soldiers. But as they neared the lift that would take them to the control center, a deafening explosion rocked the outpost. Adrien staggered, bracing himself against the wall as the floor buckled beneath them. "Vera, what the hell was that?" Adrien shouted. "Akraal have breached the power core. Structural integrity of the outpost is compromised." Mallory cursed under his breath. "We need to move now." Adrien didn't need to be told twice. He surged forward, Mallory right behind him. The lift doors loomed ahead, but as they approached, a massive Akraal warrior stepped into their path. This one was different, larger, its armor thick and jagged, eyes glowing with a fierce intelligence. "Go," Mallory shouted. "I'll handle this one." Adrien hesitated for a split second, but Mallory's expression left no room for argument. He nodded and sprinted toward the lift, diving inside just as the doors slid shut. Through the narrow gap, he caught a glimpse of Mallory squaring off against the Akraal warrior, his rifle blazing. The lift ascended, the sounds of battle fading as Adrien focused on the task ahead. The control center was their last hope. If he could just make it there, he could end this. He could destroy the catalyst and stop the Akraal from unleashing a weapon that could wipe out entire systems. But as the lift neared the top, a cold dread settled over him. What if it wasn't enough? What if destroying the catalyst only delayed the inevitable? The doors slid open, revealing the control center at the heart of Outpost Epsilon. It was a stark contrast to the chaos below, clean, sterile, the soft hum of machinery filling the air. But Adrien's gaze was drawn to the central console, where a flashing red light indicated the self-destruct sequence. He moved quickly, inputting the necessary codes. Vera's voice guided him, calm and precise, even as the station continued to tremble under the Akraal assault. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," Vera announced. T-5 minutes to detonation. Adrien exhaled, his fingers hovering over the final command. 5 minutes. Enough time to ensure the catalyst was destroyed, but not enough to escape. His hand hovered over the console, hesitation creeping in for the first time. Was this really the only way? Before he could dwell on it further, the control room doors slid open, and an Akraal figure loomed in the entrance. But it wasn't a soldier. It was the Akraal leader. The creature stepped forward, its eyes glowing with an eerie intelligence, its voice a deep, guttural growl. "You are too late, human." Adrien raised his rifle, but the leader didn't flinch. Instead, it smiled a slow, terrifying expression that sent a chill down Adrien's spine. "The catalyst is ours." Adrien's pulse quickened, his finger tightening on the trigger of his rifle, but something held him back. The Akraal leader stood before him, exuding a calm confidence that unsettled him more than any brute force could. "You won't reach it," Adrien said, keeping his voice steady, trying to project certainty despite the fear gnawing at him. "The self-destruct is already counting down. In 5 minutes, this entire place will be vaporized, along with your catalyst." The Akraal leader stepped further into the control room, its massive form dwarfing Adrien. Its eyes brilliant, molten orbs bore into him. "You misunderstand, human. We do not need the catalyst." Adrien's brow furrowed, his mind racing to process what the leader meant. He had assumed the Akraal's entire mission was to retrieve the catalyst, to claim its power for their ongoing war. If that wasn't the case, then what were they after? The leader seemed to sense his confusion and chuckled a low, rumbling sound that reverberated through the room. The catalyst is secondary. Its power is a tool, nothing more. What we need is the key to unlocking it. Adrien's grip on his rifle tightened. And what's the key? The leader's smile widened, its sharp teeth glinting under the dim light of the control center. Your kind. For a moment, the words hung in the air, almost nonsensical. But then it clicked. The catalyst wasn't just some ancient weapon. It was something far more dangerous, something designed to interface with humans. That was why the Akraal had been hunting the catalyst for so long, and why they had attacked human outposts specifically. They didn't need the device. They needed someone to activate it. The blood drained from Adrien's face. That's why you've been attacking human colonies. You need one of us to turn it on. Precisely, the Akraal leader said, stepping closer. You see, our scientists have studied the catalyst for generations, but without a human to complete the sequence, it remains dormant. Powerless. We simply needed the right opportunity. Adrien took a step back, his mind racing. If what the leader was saying was true, the stakes had just skyrocketed. The catalyst wasn't a weapon in itself, it was something that could only be activated by a human, making it an even greater threat than he'd realized. And now, the Akraal leader said, spreading its arms wide, you will help us. Adrien scoffed, though his heart was pounding. Help you? You must be out of your mind. The leader's gaze darkened, the smile fading from its face. Do not be so quick to dismiss us, human. Your species is known for its resilience, its creativity. But you are also fragile. It would be a shame if you forced us to break you. Adrien's mind raced. He could shoot the leader right here and now, but something told him that killing this one alien wouldn't stop the invasion. The Akraal forces were already inside the outpost, and the catalyst was still buried below them, ticking away like a time bomb. The self-destruct was the only real solution, but with the Akraal leader standing in front of him, it seemed almost impossible to reach that final step. I won't let you use it, Adrien said, forcing the words out through gritted teeth. The leader tilted its head, as if considering him. Your loyalty is admirable, but loyalty, like all things, can be broken. Before Adrien could react, the leader lunged forward with blinding speed. It was faster than any Akraal soldier he'd encountered, quicker, more precise. Adrien barely managed to sidestep the attack, his rifle slipping from his grasp as he tumbled to the ground. The Akraal leader moved like a predator, closing the gap in an instant. Adrien scrambled back, his hand brushing against the console. His fingers hovered over the controls, ready to input the final command to trigger the self-destruct sequence. But the leader's massive hand slammed down onto the console, crushing the panel beneath its weight. You will not die here, the leader growled, its face inches from Adrien's. You will come with us. Pain shot through Adrien's arm as the Akraal leader lifted him effortlessly, its grip like iron. He struggled, but it was useless. The leader carried him as if he were weightless, dragging him toward the doorway. Let me go, Adrien shouted, trying to kick free. The leader ignored him, its grip tightening. The catalyst will awaken soon, human. You will be the one to see it, to activate it. And when you do, the universe will tremble before the Akraal. Mallory fought like a man possessed. His entire body ached, muscles screaming in protest with every movement, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. The Akraal warrior in front of him was relentless, its massive frame moving with terrifying precision. Mallory ducked under a swing, his sidearm barking as he fired point blank into the creature's midsection. The Akraal stumbled, but didn't fall. It roared in fury, its claws lashing out. Mallory barely avoided the strike, rolling across the floor and coming up on one knee. He fired again, this time aiming for the creature's head. The shot connected, and the Akraal's skull exploded in a spray of dark blood. Panting, Mallory pushed himself to his feet. The hallway was littered with bodies, Akraal and human alike. He'd barely made it through the gauntlet of soldiers to reach the lift, but now there was no time to catch his breath. Adrien was still out there, and the outpost was seconds away from collapse. The floor shook beneath him as another explosion rocked the structure. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling, and Mallory knew he was running out of time. He activated his comm, praying that Vera could still hear him. "Vera, where's Adrien?" There was a brief crackle of static before Vera's voice came through. "Lieutenant Adrien has engaged with the Akraal leader. They are en route to the catalyst chamber." Mallory swore under his breath. The catalyst. Of course, that's where the Akraal leader was taking him. "I need a direct route to the chamber," Mallory said, already moving toward the nearest access hatch. "Routing," Vera replied. "But be advised, Akraal forces are converging on your location." "Let them come," Mallory muttered, his grip tightening on his rifle. "I'm not letting that thing fall into their hands." The catalyst chamber was vast, a cavernous expanse of metal and stone, lit by the eerie glow of the ancient device at its center. Adrien was dragged through the entryway, the Akraal leader's grip like a vice around his arm. He struggled, but the alien's strength was overwhelming. The catalyst stood before them, a massive, crystalline structure that pulsed with a soft, rhythmic hum. Its surface shimmered with strange, alien symbols that Adrien couldn't begin to understand. It looked ancient, powerful, and completely out of place in the sterile surroundings of the outpost. "This is it," the Akraal leader said, its voice reverent. "The key to our victory." Adrien gritted his teeth. "You'll never use it." The leader chuckled. "We don't need to. You will." With a swift motion, the leader threw Adrien toward the catalyst. He hit the ground hard, skidding across the slick surface before coming to a stop at the base of the towering structure. Pain shot through his side, but he forced himself to his feet. "You are the one who will awaken it," the leader said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "It was made for your kind, and now it will serve us." Adrien's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the energy radiating from the catalyst, a pulsing force that seemed to draw him in. He fought against it, his mind screaming for him to run, to escape. But there was nowhere to go. The Akraal leader loomed behind him, watching with cold eyes. "Do it, human. Fulfill your purpose." Adrien's hand hovered over the surface of the catalyst, trembling. He could feel its power, its hunger. It was waiting for him, calling to him. If he activated it, the Akraal would have their weapon. They would sweep across the galaxy, unstoppable. But if he didn't, a sudden roar echoed through the chamber, and Adrien turned just in time to see Mallory burst through the entryway, rifle blazing. Mallory fired as he charged into the chamber, his rifle spitting rapid bursts of plasma. The shot struck the Akraal leader, causing it to stagger, but the hulking alien barely flinched as it turned to face this new threat. Its molten eyes narrowed in fury. Adrien felt a surge of hope. Mallory had made it. But the moment of relief was short-lived. The Akraal leader was far from defeated. With a roar that shook the walls of the chamber, it lunged toward Mallory, moving with terrifying speed for something so large. Mallory didn't back down. He sidestepped the initial attack, his movements precise and controlled despite the chaos around him. His rifle barked again, the plasma round striking the Akraal leader in the chest and shoulders. But the alien seemed almost impervious to the damage, its thick, armored hide absorbing most of the impact. Adrien scrambled back, his eyes darting between the ongoing fight and the catalyst looming behind him. He could still feel its pull, a low, insistent hum at the edge of his consciousness, urging him to touch it, to unlock its power. But he couldn't. He wouldn't. Mallory and the Akraal leader clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand struggle. The leader's massive claws swiped at Mallory, who ducked and weaved with practiced precision. But the alien was relentless, and for every blow Mallory dodged, another came dangerously close. "Adrien," Mallory shouted, his voice strained as he parried another strike. "We need to blow this place now." Adrien's gaze shifted to the remains of the control panel, shattered by the Akraal leader earlier. His stomach tightened. There was no way to trigger the self-destruct manually anymore. But there had to be another way. Vera, she could still be connected to the system. His hand shook as he activated his comm, praying the AI hadn't been compromised in the battle. Vera, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, I need you to initiate the self-destruct sequence remotely. The manual controls are gone. There was a brief pause, and Adrien's heart sank, fearing the worst. But then Vera's calm voice came through the comm. Understood, Lieutenant. I can bypass the local controls and initiate the sequence. However, the countdown will be shorter, less than 2 minutes. Do it, Adrien said, not caring about the time. They didn't have any other options. The chamber rumbled, and the lights flickered as the self-destruct sequence activated. A distant klaxon began to blare, signaling the impending detonation. Adrien could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the final moments pressing down on him. The Akraal leader must have realized what was happening. It turned away from Mallory, its molten eyes locking onto Adrien once more. The fury in its gaze was palpable. You fool, it roared, its voice booming through the chamber. You will destroy us all. Adrien backed away, keeping himself between the alien and the catalyst. Better we all die than let you use that thing. The leader bared its teeth, a guttural growl emanating from deep within its chest. You are throwing away your life, human. You could have been part of something greater. Adrien didn't respond. He didn't care about the leader's grand vision or its promises of power. He only cared about stopping them, about making sure the catalyst never fell into their hands. Mallory, catching his breath from the fight, moved to stand beside Adrien. His rifle was still raised, his eyes fixed on the Akraal leader. Time's ticking, he muttered. We need to get out of here. Adrien nodded, his mind racing. The entrance to the chamber was still clear, but the Akraal leader was blocking their path. There was no way they could get past it without a fight. The leader took a step forward, its eyes narrowing. You think you can escape? You cannot outrun your fate. Mallory's grip tightened on his rifle. We don't have to outrun it. We just have to outrun you. Before the leader could respond, Mallory fired again, this time aiming for the alien's legs. The plasma rounds tore through the leader's knees, and it roared in pain, stumbling backward. Mallory didn't wait. He grabbed Adrien's arm and pulled him toward the exit. Move, Mallory shouted, and Adrien didn't need to be told twice. They sprinted toward the doorway, the sound of the Akraal leader's enraged roars echoing behind them. The chamber was starting to collapse, the walls shaking as the self-destruct sequence neared its final stage. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling, and the floor cracked beneath their feet. As they ran, Adrien's mind raced. They had less than 2 minutes before the outpost was completely destroyed. Even if they managed to escape the chamber, they still had to find a way off the planet. The odds were slim, but they had no choice. The hallway outside the chamber was littered with the bodies of fallen soldiers, both human and Akraal. Adrien's heart ached at the sight, but he forced himself to keep moving. There was no time to mourn. We need to get to the hangar, Mallory said, his voice barely audible over the sound of the collapsing structure. If we can reach one of the ships, we might be able to make it out of here. Adrien nodded, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His legs burned with exhaustion, but he pushed himself forward. They couldn't stop. Not now. Behind them, the Akraal leader's voice echoed through the hallway, filled with fury and desperation. You cannot escape your destiny, human. The catalyst will be ours. Adrien didn't look back. He couldn't afford to. All that mattered now was reaching the hangar and getting off the planet before everything went up in flames. They rounded a corner, and the doors to the hangar came into view. But standing between them and their escape was another squad of Akraal soldiers, their weapons raised and ready. Mallory cursed under his breath. Of course they'd have backup. Adrien raised his own rifle, his hands trembling from exhaustion. We fight through them. Mallory nodded, a grim determination settling over his features. No other choice. The Akraal soldiers charged forward, their battle cries filling the air. Adrien and Mallory opened fire, their plasma rifles blazing as they fought to clear a path to the hangar. The battle was brutal, each second ticking down like a death sentence. Adrien could feel the heat from the self-destruct sequence building, the walls around them starting to glow from the intense energy. Time was running out. Mallory took down the last Akraal soldier with a well-placed shot to the head, and they sprinted toward the hangar doors. The massive, reinforced metal doors slid open with a groan, revealing the ships inside. They didn't hesitate. Adrien and Mallory ran to the nearest vessel, a small but fast-looking shuttle. Mallory climbed into the pilot's seat, his hands flying over the controls as he powered up the engines. "Hold on," Mallory muttered, his voice tight with concentration. "This is going to be close." The shuttle's engines roared to life, and Adrien strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat. He glanced back at the hangar doors, half expecting to see the Akraal leader charging after them. But there was nothing, just the distant rumble of the outpost collapsing. Mallory guided the shuttle out of the hangar, the small craft hurtling toward the sky. The planet's surface was a blur beneath them as they raced to escape the impending explosion. Adrien's heart pounded in his chest, his fingers digging into the armrest of his seat. They were so close, just a few more seconds. And then, with a deafening roar, the outpost exploded behind them, a massive fireball engulfing the entire structure. The shockwave rocked the shuttle, sending it spinning through the air. Mallory fought to regain control, his knuckles white as he gripped the controls. The shuttle shook violently, but after a few heart-stopping moments, the craft stabilized. Adrien let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. They had made it. Barely. Mallory glanced over at him, a tired smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "We're not dead yet." Adrien chuckled, though it came out more like a ragged gasp. "Give it time." The shuttle soared into the atmosphere, breaking free from the planet's gravitational grip. Adrien could hardly believe they had escaped the fiery destruction of the outpost. He glanced back at the receding planet, now just a fiery orb, a tomb for all the lives lost in the battle. "Vera," he called, his voice steadier now. "Can you track the remaining Akraal ships?" "Scanning now, Lieutenant," Vera responded, her calm voice cutting through the tense silence. "There are 3 Akraal vessels within your proximity, currently regrouping in a nearby orbiting formation." Adrien's stomach tightened at the news. They weren't out of danger yet. "How many crew members?" "Analyzing. It appears that each vessel houses approximately 50 to 70 Akraal soldiers. This is not including their officers." Mallory swore under his breath. "Great. So we went from fighting one leader to an entire fleet." "Vera," Adrien said, "can we escape undetected?" "The shuttle's current trajectory is evasive," Vera replied. "However, engaging the stealth mode may be advisable to minimize detection. Should I initiate?" "Do it," Adrien said, a sense of urgency gripping him. The ship dimmed as the stealth technology kicked in, cloaking them in a shroud of electromagnetic invisibility. Adrien hoped it was enough to buy them some time. "Let's set a course for Earth," Mallory said, fingers deftly navigating the controls. "We can regroup there and figure out our next move." Adrien hesitated. "Earth? After everything that happened here?" "Where else are we going to go?" Mallory shot back, his tone firm. "We need to warn Command about the Akraal and what they're planning. This is bigger than just us now." Adrien nodded, knowing Mallory was right. But the thought of returning to Earth after witnessing the horrors of the Akraal firsthand was unsettling. Yet, they had a duty. The information they held was vital, and if the Akraal were indeed planning a larger offensive, Earth had to be ready. "Set the course," Adrien said. "Let's get out of here." The shuttle zipped through space, the stars streaking past in brilliant lines of light. Adrien settled into his seat, exhaustion washing over him. They had fought against insurmountable odds and survived. But now, the burden of what they'd experienced weighed heavily on him. "You okay?" Mallory asked, glancing at him with a concerned expression. "Just thinking about everything," Adrien admitted. "About the soldiers we lost, the ones who didn't make it out." Mallory's jaw clenched. "We'll honor them by ensuring this doesn't happen again. We need to get that intel to command so they can prepare." Before Adrien could respond, the ship jolted violently, warning lights flashing as the control panel erupted in sparks. "What the—" "Systems malfunction," Mallory shouted, desperately trying to regain control. "We've been hit." Adrien's heart raced as he scanned the readouts. "Vera, what happened?" Detecting an energy pulse from an Akraal vessel, Vera reported, her tone now urgent. "They've engaged their weapon systems." "Can we outrun them?" Adrien asked, bracing himself against the console. "Affirmative, but the damage to the engines is significant. We are losing power rapidly." "Then we'll have to fight." Mallory's expression hardened, determination flooding his features. Adrien could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Fight? We can't take on an entire fleet." "If we don't, we'll be caught and killed," Mallory said, eyes fixed on the viewscreen showing the looming silhouettes of the Akraal ships. "We need to buy ourselves time to repair the shuttle. If we can take out their weapons, they won't be able to pursue us." Adrien swallowed hard, knowing there was no other option. "Let's do it." "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Mallory shouted as he swung the shuttle around, targeting one of the smaller Akraal ships. "Vera, can you help us with targeting systems?" "Affirmative," Vera replied. "Initiating targeting algorithms. Weapon systems are online and ready for deployment." "Get ready, Adrien," Mallory said, adrenaline coursing through him. "We're going in hot." The shuttle surged forward, the hum of its engines morphing into a roar. Adrien gripped the edge of his seat, fighting against the rising fear. They were outnumbered, but they had to act decisively. "Firing now," Mallory declared, and the shuttle's plasma cannons lit up, firing a volley of brilliant energy bolts toward the nearest Akraal ship. The first blast struck true, exploding against the ship's hull. The Akraal crew scrambled to respond, returning fire with heavy weapons that lit up the void. Adrien felt the impact shudder through the shuttle, rattling them in their seats. "Redirect power to shields," Mallory ordered, sweat beading on his brow. "We can't take many more hits like that." Adrien frantically punched in the commands, rerouting power to reinforce their defenses. The shields glimmered bright, a shimmering barrier that absorbed the brunt of the incoming fire. But the shuttle shook with every hit. "Hold steady," Mallory shouted as he executed another evasive maneuver, narrowly dodging a barrage of plasma fire. "We need to create an opening." Adrien's heart raced. They couldn't afford to lose their focus. "Target the weapons array. If we can disable their guns, they'll be easier to outrun." "On it," Mallory snapped, lining up another shot. Firing. The shuttle's cannons roared again, the plasma bolts streaking through space like comets. They struck the Akraal ship's weaponry, causing explosions to erupt across the deck. Adrien felt a surge of hope as the enemy fire slowed, their formations beginning to scatter. "Good job, Mallory," he exclaimed, trying to keep the momentum. "Let's keep it up." But just as they began to gain the upper hand, the larger Akraal vessel, the one commanded by the leader they had faced earlier, moved in closer, its massive frame dwarfing their shuttle. "Damn it," Mallory cursed. "It's flanking us. Get ready." Adrien's stomach dropped as he realized they had drawn the attention of the fiercest enemy ship. "What do we do now?" "Prepare for boarding," Mallory said grimly, gripping the controls with white-knuckled determination. "We have to get ready for hand-to-hand combat. If they board us, we need to hold them off long enough to escape." Before Adrien could respond, the Akraal ship unleashed a barrage of fire, targeting their engines directly. The shuttle bucked violently, alarms blaring as the hull groaned under the strain. "Hang on," Mallory yelled, steering the ship to avoid the worst of the damage, but it was too late. The shuttle was taking on water now, plasma systems failing one by one. "Vera!" Adrien shouted, panic rising in his chest. What's happening? Critical damage detected. Shields are failing. Structural integrity compromised. Vera's voice was urgent, the AI struggling to keep up with the chaos. Evacuation protocol initiated. We can't leave yet, Mallory shot back, determination etched into every line of his face. We fight. Adrien took a deep breath, steeling himself. They were not done yet. All right, let's do this. The shuttle rocked again as the Akraal ship drew nearer, the larger vessel's docking clamps extending. Mallory braced for impact, preparing to defend their last stand. As the Akraal soldiers stormed into the shuttle, Adrien and Mallory stood back to back, rifles raised and ready for the onslaught. This was it. They had come too far to back down now. Together, Mallory shouted. Together, Adrien echoed, adrenaline surging through him. The Akraal poured in, and the air was thick with the scent of ionized plasma and the clash of metal. They fought side by side, defiance burning in their hearts as they held off the tide of enemies, refusing to let their story end here. Adrien's heart raced as the first Akraal soldier charged through the hatch, its spiked armor gleaming menacingly in the dim light of the shuttle. Without a moment's hesitation, Adrien squeezed the trigger, the rifle vibrating against his shoulder as a plasma bolt tore through the air, striking the soldier square in the chest. The Akraal crumpled, but there was no time to celebrate. More surged through the opening, their elongated limbs moving with unnatural speed. Adrien could see the glint of their eyes, a mixture of hatred and hunger, as they advanced. Mallory, to the right, Adrien yelled, pivoting just in time to fire at another soldier that had circled behind them. The bolt struck, sending the alien reeling. Got it, Mallory shouted, his voice fierce and commanding. He swung around to cover Adrien, his rifle barking loudly as he fired at another group of Akraal that were pushing through the doorway. The close quarters of the shuttle turned into a battleground, each second stretching into an eternity as Adrien and Mallory fought back to back. The rhythmic blasts of their weapons mixed with the snarls and shrieks of the Akraal, creating a cacophony of chaos. Watch your flank, Mallory called out, taking a step back as an Akraal soldier lunged, claws outstretched. The alien barely missed him, but Adrien was quick, turning and firing. The soldier collapsed, but the shuttle felt as though it were collapsing around them, the walls vibrating from the impact of incoming fire from the Akraal outside. Vera, Adrien shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. What's our status? Can we still escape? Structural integrity is failing at 47%. Power reserves critically low, Vera replied, her voice unwavering amid the chaos. The shuttle will not withstand prolonged assault. Adrien gritted his teeth, fear gripping his gut. They had to make it out of here alive. We need to push them back. We can't let them overwhelm us. Agreed, Mallory said, scanning the room. We need to use our environment. Push them towards the back hatch. Adrien nodded, his mind racing. They had to create a choke point. Let's fall back. Move. With a synchronized effort, they retreated toward the rear of the shuttle, firing their weapons to keep the advancing Akraal at bay. Each step was calculated, every movement deliberate as they drew the enemy deeper into the confined space. Keep firing, Mallory urged as they reached the hatch. We can blow it and create a diversion. Adrien's fingers danced over the controls. On my mark, we blow the hatch. Get ready. As more Akraal soldiers flooded in, Adrien felt a surge of determination. He and Mallory would not be the last of their kind to fall. They would fight until their last breath if necessary. Now, Adrien shouted, activating the explosive charges they had rigged. The hatch exploded outward in a fiery blast, creating a violent wind that swept through the shuttle, pulling the Akraal soldiers back. Adrien and Mallory took their chance, darting through the debris and into the open space beyond. They were met with a chilling sight of the Akraal ships, docking bay, a massive expanse filled with alien technology and the remnants of a skirmish against their forces. Over there, Mallory pointed toward a small shuttle parked in the corner. We can take that. It looks functional. Adrien nodded, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Let's move. They sprinted across the docking bay, gunfire echoing behind them as the remaining Akraal regrouped, preparing to pursue. Adrien reached the shuttle first, fumbling with the hatch controls as he glanced back to see a swarm of Akraal soldiers barreling toward them. Come on, he urged the shuttle, the seconds feeling like hours. Mallory arrived just in time, covering Adrien as he punched in the access codes. We need to hurry, he shouted, firing at the advancing aliens. With a satisfying hiss, the hatch slid open, and Adrien scrambled inside. He slid into the pilot's seat, quickly assessing the controls. It was a different model than he was used to, but there was no time for hesitation. Get in, he shouted to Mallory. Mallory jumped in and slammed the hatch shut just as the first blasts of plasma fire hit the shuttle's hull. Adrien's fingers raced over the controls, powering up the engines and diverting power to the shields. Hold on, he yelled, gritting his teeth as he punched the throttle. The shuttle roared to life, engines screaming as they shot forward, narrowly dodging more blasts as they blasted out of the docking bay. The Akraal ship's alarms blared in the background, red lights flashing as they realized their prey was escaping. Adrien banked the shuttle hard to the left, maneuvering through the dense debris field surrounding the Akraal ship. Can you keep track of our position, Vera? Affirmative. Initiating evasive maneuvers to evade detection. However, it appears they are launching interceptors, Vera replied, her tone urgent. Mallory, we've got company, Adrien shouted as a squadron of small Akraal fighters emerged from the shadows, their weapons charging. Let's give them something to think about, Mallory said, his hands gripping the console, determination etched on his face. Adrien nodded, and they engaged in a dizzying dance of evasion and attack, weaving through the debris while firing back at the pursuing ships. Plasma bolts zipped past them, some striking their shields and causing jolts to ripple through the cabin. Focus on the lead fighter, Adrien shouted, locking onto the closest Akraal ship. Firing. The shuttle's weapons discharged, a volley of plasma striking true and sending the Akraal fighter spiraling into the debris. Good hit, Mallory shouted, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Adrien felt a surge of exhilaration, but there was no time to celebrate. More fighters closed in, surrounding them, and the comms crackled with alien voices yelling orders. Keep your head in the game, Mallory urged, his voice steady despite the chaos. We can't let them box us in. Adrien turned hard to the right, avoiding another round of fire. I see a way out, just hold on. The shuttle jinked and jived, darting between the floating debris and weaving under the remnants of an old space station, trying to throw off their pursuers. Adrien focused on the path ahead, determination burning in his chest. Vera, can you boost our speed? He asked, his breath steadying. Engaging boost now, Vera replied. The shuttle surged forward, its engines roaring as they picked up speed, propelling them toward the open void of space. But the Akraal fighters were relentless. They followed closely, their formation tightening as they prepared to fire. Not today, Mallory shouted, targeting another fighter and unleashing a volley of plasma. Adrien focused on their escape route. They were nearing the edge of the debris field, a path that led into open space, but the Akraal weren't far behind. Brace for impact, Adrien yelled as he pushed the shuttle to its limits, the engines screaming in protest. The lead Akraal fighter fired, the bolt narrowly missing the shuttle and striking a nearby piece of debris, causing an explosion that sent shockwaves rippling through space. Push through, Mallory urged, gripping the edge of his seat as they tore through the debris field. Adrien could feel the shuttle vibrating, the hull straining against the pressure. Just as they broke free from the field, the view opened up into the vast expanse of space. Adrien punched in the coordinates for Earth, his heart racing. We did it, he exclaimed, relief washing over him. Not yet, Mallory warned, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the viewscreen. They're still coming after us. Adrien turned back, spotting the remaining Akraal fighters regrouping. Vera, can we outrun them? calculating optimal route. However, the Akraal ships have superior speed, Vera warned. Engaging stealth mode is advised. Do it, Adrien commanded, praying it would be enough. As the shuttle shifted into stealth mode, the Akraal fighters hesitated, their sensors scanning for signs of the elusive shuttle. Adrien held his breath, watching as the enemy ships scattered, confusion rippling through their ranks. Let's hope this works, Mallory said, his voice tense. We can't afford to be found again. Fingers crossed, Adrien replied, heart pounding. The shuttle drifted in the silence of space, cloaked from sight. They were alive, but for how long? Adrien knew the threat was far from over. The Akraal were relentless, and they would not stop until they found them. As they navigated the darkness, Adrien couldn't shake the feeling of dread. They had survived the battle, but there were bigger challenges ahead. They had information the Akraal would kill to obtain, and Adrien felt the weight of that responsibility pressing down on him. Vera, he said, breaking the silence, can you give me a status report? System stabilizing. We are currently safe from detection, Vera replied. However, it is advisable to plot a course for Earth immediately to deliver the intel. Right. Plot the course, Adrien said, determination flooding him. We need to warn them. They have no idea what's coming. The silence in the shuttle was deafening as Adrien and Mallory exchanged glances, the weight of their recent battle hanging heavily in the air. They had managed to evade the Akraal for now, but the reality of their situation loomed like a storm cloud overhead. Do you think they'll track us? Mallory asked, his voice low and filled with concern. I'm sure they will, Adrien replied, fingers dancing across the console as he initiated the warp drive sequence. They won't let us get away that easily. We have to reach Earth and warn Command about the Akraal's tactics. The console beeped in response, and Adrien felt a flicker of hope. Warp drive is ready. Just hold on tight. Mallory nodded, gripping the edges of his seat as Adrien engaged the warp. The stars blurred into streaks of light, and for a moment, they were enveloped in a cocoon of tranquility. But peace was a fleeting illusion in the vastness of space, and Adrien couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. As they warped through the cosmos, Adrien reflected on the events that had brought them here. The Akraal had been ruthless, their brutality a stark reminder of what humanity was up against. The fact that he and Mallory were still alive felt like a miracle, but it also filled him with guilt. So many had fought and died to protect humanity, and he had to honor their sacrifice. Vera, how long until we reach Earth? Adrien asked, breaking the silence. Calculating trajectory. Estimated time of arrival, 12 minutes, Vera responded, her voice steady. However, I recommend preparing for potential Akraal interception upon arrival. Adrien nodded, turning to Mallory. We need to be ready. They'll likely expect us to come in guns blazing, but we have to be smart about this. Mallory leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. We can use the shuttle's stealth systems to our advantage. If we can land undetected, we can get to Command and warn them about the impending invasion. Good idea, Adrien said, impressed with Mallory's strategic thinking. Let's not give them any reason to suspect we're coming. As the seconds ticked by, tension mounted in the cabin. Adrien could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, a mix of fear and determination fueling his resolve. They were on the brink of a new battle, and this time it wasn't just for their survival, it was for the fate of Earth. 5 minutes to Earth, Vera announced, her tone unwavering. Adrien took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. Once we land, we need to find the highest-ranking officer we can. They have to understand the seriousness of this threat. Mallory nodded in agreement, his expression fierce. If we can get the intel we have to the right people, we can prepare a defense. We won't let them catch us off guard again. As they neared Earth, Adrien could see the blue planet looming in the distance. A rush of nostalgia hit him. Memories of home flooded his mind, visions of peaceful skies and laughter echoing in the air. But that peace was threatened, and it was up to him and Mallory to protect it. Entering Earth's atmosphere, Vera warned as the shuttle began to shake from the turbulent entry. "Hold steady," Adrien yelled, wrestling with the controls as the shuttle buffeted through the layers of air. The heat from re-entry enveloped them, and Adrien's pulse quickened. "Adjusting trajectory," he shouted, his hands steadying the ship. "We need to come in low to avoid radar detection." Mallory braced himself, watching the altimeter as it dropped rapidly. "We're gonna need to land this baby in one piece." Adrien grinned despite the tension. "One piece is all I'm aiming for." With a final burst of effort, they broke through the clouds, revealing the sprawling landscape of their home planet below. The vibrant greens and blues contrasted sharply with the chaos of space, and Adrien felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Where are we landing?" Mallory asked, scanning the horizon. "There's a secluded area just outside the military base. It should provide some cover," Adrien replied, eyes darting over the terrain. As they approached the designated landing zone, Adrien flicked on the shuttle's camouflage systems, hoping it would help conceal them from prying eyes. The ground rushed up to meet them, and with a skilled maneuver, he set the shuttle down smoothly amidst the trees. "Touchdown," Adrien exhaled, a wave of relief washing over him. "Now we need to move fast," Mallory said, already unstrapping himself from his seat. "We don't have long before they realize we're back." Adrien nodded, his heart pounding as he followed Mallory out of the shuttle. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, grounding him in the moment. "Let's go." They moved quickly, darting through the underbrush, keeping low to avoid detection. The military base was only a few kilometers away, but every step felt like a countdown. Time was slipping through their fingers. "Vera, can you relay our intel to command?" Adrien asked as they ran. "I will prepare a secure channel. However, I advise caution, as the Akraal may intercept communications," Vera warned. "Understood," Adrien said, his mind racing. "We'll deliver it in person if we have to. We need them to take this seriously." As they neared the edge of the forest, the base came into view, its imposing structure a stark reminder of the stakes they faced. Adrien's chest tightened as he spotted the guards on patrol, their figures a mix of familiarity and danger. "We'll need to sneak in," Mallory said, his eyes scanning the perimeter. "There's a maintenance entrance around the side that might be unguarded." "Lead the way," Adrien said, adrenaline fueling his every step. They crept along the shadows, avoiding the main thoroughfare where soldiers moved in and out. Every rustle of leaves sent jolts of tension through Adrien, but he pushed forward, focused on their mission. As they approached the maintenance entrance, Adrien's heart raced. This was it. They had to convince the command that the Akraal threat was real. There was no room for failure. Mallory peered around the corner. "Looks clear, let's go." Adrien nodded, slipping through the door behind Mallory. The air inside the base was sterile, the faint hum of machinery echoing around them. He could see soldiers moving about, unaware of the storm brewing just beyond their walls. "Which way to command?" Mallory asked, glancing at the maps posted on the walls. "This way," Adrien replied, guiding them down the corridor. They moved quickly, adrenaline pushing them forward as they approached the command center. The heavy door loomed before them, and Adrien felt a swell of determination. "Once we're inside, we have to act fast," he said, gripping the handle tightly. "We don't have time for explanations. We have to show them the data." "Ready when you are," Mallory said, steeling himself for what lay ahead. With a deep breath, Adrien pushed the door open and stepped inside. The command center was filled with officers, their faces lit by the glow of multiple screens displaying various readings and communications. "Lieutenant Adrien Kane, we have critical intel," Adrien announced, his voice firm and commanding. All eyes turned toward him, surprise mingling with curiosity. "Sir, what are you doing here?" an officer shouted, rushing toward them. "You were reported missing." "No time for pleasantries," Adrien replied, urgency in his voice. "The Akraal are launching an all-out assault. We barely escaped, and they have information on our defenses. We need to prepare for war." The room erupted into chaos as officers scrambled to assess the situation. Adrien felt a surge of hope as they began to understand the gravity of their message. "Where's the commander?" Mallory asked, scanning the room for any sign of leadership. "Right here," a commanding voice boomed from the far end of the room. A tall man with a sharp jaw and piercing blue eyes strode forward, exuding authority. "What is going on?" Adrien stepped forward, his heart racing. "Sir, we have encountered the Akraal and survived. They're aware of our tactics, and we must warn our forces before it's too late." The commander's gaze narrowed, taking in their disheveled appearances. "And you have proof of this?" Adrien nodded, pulling out the data chip they had secured before fleeing the Akraal ship. "All the intel we gathered during our mission. It details their fleet movements and attack patterns." "Then hand it over," the commander ordered, extending his hand. With a deep breath, Adrien placed the chip in the commander's palm. "Thank you, Lieutenant. We'll assess this immediately," the commander replied, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "You two need to debrief. We'll prepare the defense." As the commander turned to rally his officers, Adrien felt a surge of determination. They had made it. They had brought the warning, and now they would help fortify Earth against the impending onslaught. The command center buzzed with activity, officers shouting orders and coordinating defense strategies. Adrien and Mallory stood at the periphery, their hearts racing as they watched the chaos unfold. For the first time in days, they felt a flicker of hope. "Lieutenant Kane, Lieutenant Mallory," the commanding officer's voice cut through the din. "Over here, please." Adrien exchanged a glance with Mallory, then moved to join the commander at the central briefing table. Tactical maps were sprawled out, illuminated by overhead screens displaying data feeds from various military assets. "Status report, now," the commander demanded, his eyes locking onto Adrien. "Sir, the Akraal fleet is massive. They're launching an offensive targeting our primary colonies, with a coordinated strike that could overwhelm our defenses," Adrien explained, his voice steady. "We have to set up ambush points and strengthen our outer defenses immediately." The commander nodded, already scribbling notes. "Agreed. We can't allow them to breach our perimeter. Mallory, what do you suggest?" "We need to use guerrilla tactics," Mallory replied, a fire igniting in his eyes. "If we can anticipate their movements using the data we collected, we can hit them where it hurts. We've seen how they operate. Their ships are powerful, but not invincible." The commander nodded, impressed. "Good. I'll assign you both to the tactical operations team. We need boots on the ground to ensure our defenses are positioned correctly." "Understood, sir," Adrien replied, determination surging through him. This was their chance to make a real difference. As the commander began issuing orders, the atmosphere shifted, a collective resolve settling over the room. They were all aware of the stakes, the weight of responsibility heavy in the air. "Get me all available intelligence on Akraal troop movements," the commander said to one of the officers. "We need to prepare contingency plans for every possible scenario." Adrien leaned closer to the table, analyzing the maps. "If we set up ambush points here, and here," he indicated key locations, "we can funnel their forces into kill zones. We need to ensure we maximize our firepower in these areas." Mallory nodded in agreement. "I can coordinate with the local militias to reinforce our positions. We'll need every able-bodied person we can get." "Good thinking," the commander said, visibly impressed. "Let's make it happen." As the officers around the table scrambled to execute the plan, Adrien felt a surge of adrenaline. This was what he had trained for. This was his moment to fight back against the overwhelming odds. "Adrien, Mallory, stay here," the commander instructed, pointing at them. "I need you both to assist in coordinating our air and ground forces. We're going to need precision strikes to take out their command ships." They nodded, the reality of their mission settling in. The Akraal were ruthless, but they were also predictable in their aggression. It was a strength they could exploit. "Vera," Adrien said, turning to the console embedded in the table, Can you give us real-time updates on the Akraal fleet? Affirmative, Lieutenant, Vera responded. I am currently interfacing with the base's tactical network and compiling all available intelligence. Displaying data now. As the screens updated, Adrien felt a chill run down his spine. The numbers were staggering. They've assembled a fleet over twice the size of ours, he murmured, struggling to process the sheer scale of the impending conflict. But we have the advantage of preparation, Mallory interjected, his voice firm. We can use our knowledge of their tactics against them. Right, Adrien said, his mind racing. If we can disrupt their supply lines and hit their command ships first, we can turn the tide of this battle. The commander nodded. That's the spirit. I want you two to lead the first strike team. Hit them hard and fast. Use whatever tactics you can to destabilize their forces. We'll be right behind you. Adrien felt the weight of the responsibility settle on his shoulders, but he welcomed it. This was their chance to show the Akraal that humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. Let's gather our team, Adrien said, determination flooding his veins. We need to be ready. As they stepped away from the table, Mallory's gaze met Adrien's. We're doing this. We're actually doing this. Adrien nodded, a fierce grin breaking across his face. For Earth. For everyone who has fought and died to protect it. They moved through the command center, coordinating with soldiers and strategizing the next steps. The urgency of the situation fueled their actions, and Adrien could feel the fire of resolve in his chest. Gather the troops, Mallory called, rallying those nearby. We need to prep for an assault on the Akraal fleet. As soldiers began to respond, Adrien took a moment to scan the room. Determination radiated from every person present, and he felt a sense of unity, the kind of bond forged through shared struggle. The camaraderie sparked something within him, a reminder of why he fought. They were all in this together, and together they would rise against the darkness. Let's move, Adrien shouted, his voice ringing out. We don't have much time. As they assembled their team, a wave of energy surged through the group. Each soldier wore a look of determination, ready to face the impending battle. Listen up, Adrien called, raising his voice above the noise. The Akraal are coming for us, and we have to hit them first. We've got intel on their command structure, and we know how they operate. We're going to hit them hard and fast, disrupt their supply lines, and take out their command ships. The crowd murmured with anticipation, and Adrien felt the fire of battle igniting within them. We're humanity's last line of defense, and we will not falter. With a fierce battle cry, they gathered their weapons and prepared for the assault. Adrien led the charge, adrenaline coursing through his veins. They were warriors, and they would not be taken lightly. As they loaded into their transport ships, Adrien felt the weight of the moment. This was it, the culmination of everything they had fought for. Vera, set our coordinates for the Akraal fleet, Adrien commanded, determination etched on his face. Coordinates set, Vera confirmed. Entering jump sequence. Adrien exchanged a glance with Mallory, who nodded in understanding. They were stepping into the unknown, but they were ready to face whatever came next. The engines roared to life as the ships engaged the jump drive, and Adrien felt a rush of exhilaration as they tore through the fabric of space. Hold on tight, he shouted, gripping the console as the ship lurched forward. In an instant, they emerged from the jump, the vast expanse of the Akraal fleet sprawling before them. Ships of various sizes glimmered in the darkness, a menacing presence that sent shivers down Adrien's spine. There they are, Mallory exclaimed, pointing at the distant mass of enemy vessels. Adrien's heart raced as he assessed their strategy. Let's move in closer and get a better look. We need to find their command ship. As they maneuvered through the fleet, Adrien's mind raced with thoughts of the battle to come. This was humanity's chance to prove itself, to show the Akraal that they were not to be trifled with. Vera, can you pinpoint the command ship's location? Adrien asked, focusing on their target. Affirmative. The command ship is positioned at the center of their formation, heavily guarded by fighter ships, Vera replied, initiating tactical analysis. Adrien gripped the controls, determination fueling his every thought. We need to create a diversion. If we can draw their attention away from the command ship, we can hit it hard. Mallory leaned in, eyes gleaming with excitement. We can use the small scout ships to harass their fighters while we make our approach to the command ship. It's risky, but it could work. Let's do it, Adrien said, adrenaline surging. Prepare to launch the scout ships. As the scout ships took off, Adrien felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. They were outnumbered, but they had the element of surprise on their side. Engaging now, he announced, watching as the scout ships darted into the fray, drawing fire from the Akraal fighters. Now's our chance, Mallory urged, his voice steady. Let's go. With a fierce determination, they propelled their ship toward the command ship, weaving through the chaos of battle. The sound of explosions filled the air, and Adrien's pulse quickened as they drew closer to their target. Vera, target the command ship's weapon systems, Adrien commanded, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Locking on, Vera replied. In 3, 2, 1, firing. The ship shuddered as weapons fire erupted from their cannons, striking the command ship's defenses. The explosions rocked the enemy vessel, and Adrien felt a surge of victory. Hit them again, Mallory shouted, a wild grin on his face. Adrien's fingers danced over the controls, sending wave after wave of fire toward the command ship. The Akraal were taken by surprise, their formations breaking apart as they scrambled to respond. But Adrien knew they couldn't let up. We need to keep the pressure on, focus fire. As their ship unleashed a barrage of fire, Adrien felt the adrenaline coursing through him. This was it. This was their moment to prove that humanity would not be defeated. Look, their shields are weakening, Mallory shouted, eyes gleaming with excitement. Adrien's heart raced as they pressed the attack. Let's finish this. With one final barrage, their ship rocked the command ship, and Adrien felt a sense of exhilaration wash over him. They were making a difference. They were fighting back. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted something, a massive Akraal warship breaking through the clouds of battle, its weapons charged and ready. Mallory, look out, Adrien shouted, a sense of dread flooding his senses. The Akraal warship unleashed a torrent of fire, striking their ship with a catastrophic blast. The world around Adrien exploded into chaos as the ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring. Vera, status report, Adrien yelled, struggling to regain control. Critical damage. We're losing power, Vera responded, her voice tense. Adrien felt a surge of panic as he gripped the controls. We need to get out of here. Prepare to initiate emergency jump. Engaging emergency protocols, Vera shouted, the ship vibrating under the strain. As they hurtled through the chaos, Adrien's mind raced. They were on the brink of victory, but they were also teetering on the edge of disaster. Hold on, he shouted, bracing himself for impact. The ship lurched violently as they initiated the jump, the familiar rush of energy enveloping them. When they emerged from the jump, Adrien gasped for breath, the chaos of battle fading into the distance. Status report, he yelled, heart pounding. Systems stabilizing. Shields holding, Vera replied, her voice steadying. Adrien let out a sigh of relief, glancing at Mallory. We're alive. For now, Mallory replied, a grim smile on his face. But we need to regroup and plan our next move. The ship's cabin was filled with a tense silence, punctuated only by the faint hum of systems coming back online. Adrien leaned back in his seat, feeling the adrenaline begin to ebb as the immediate danger receded. They had escaped the jaws of death, but the battle was far from over. Vera, can you give us a status update on the rest of the fleet? Adrien asked, his voice steady despite the chaos they had just endured. Affirmative, Lieutenant, Vera replied, her tone crisp and efficient. The majority of our forces have sustained significant damage, but we still have operational ships engaged with the Akraal. However, they are outnumbered and will likely need reinforcements shortly. Adrien clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. What's the status of the Akraal fleet? The Akraal command ship is still operational but severely damaged, Vera informed them. However, they are in the process of regrouping, and new ships are being deployed from their larger vessels. If we don't act quickly, they will regain their strength. Mallory leaned in, his brow furrowed with concentration. We need to hit them while they're still vulnerable. If we can take out their command ship, it might disrupt their coordination and give our fleet a fighting chance. Adrien nodded, the wheels in his mind turning. Let's formulate a plan. If we can coordinate our attack with the other ships, we can create a multi-pronged offensive. Vera, can you sync our tactical displays with the rest of the fleet? Working on it now, Vera replied, her interface buzzing as she connected to the network. Adrien turned to Mallory, who was already deep in thought. We'll need to leverage our scout ships again. Their agility can help us get past the bulk of the Akraal forces and allow us to strike directly at the command ship. Exactly, Mallory said, his voice growing more animated. We can use our remaining firepower to distract them, while the scouts hit their weak points. If we can disable their weapon systems, we'll have a clear path. Adrien felt a spark of excitement as their plan began to take shape. Let's not forget our ground forces. If we can establish a foothold on one of their smaller ships, we can disrupt their operations from within. It'll create confusion and give us the edge. Then it's settled, Mallory declared, his eyes shining with determination. We'll launch a coordinated attack and take down their command ship once and for all. As they prepared to re-enter the fray, Adrien felt the weight of their mission settle heavily on his shoulders. This wasn't just about winning a battle, it was about ensuring humanity's survival. Vera, how long until we can launch? Adrien asked, glancing at the tactical displays. Approximately 5 minutes, Vera replied. All systems are coming online, and I am coordinating with the remaining ships to initiate the offensive. Adrien nodded, steeling himself for the fight ahead. Let's make sure everyone is on the same page. We need clear communication to ensure the success of this operation. He began sending out orders, rallying the remaining crew and soldiers who had survived the previous attack. The urgency in his voice resonated with the crew as they scrambled to prepare for battle. Listen up, Adrien called, drawing their attention. We've got one shot at this. We're going to launch a coordinated strike against the Akraal command ship. Our goal is to take it out before they can regroup. We'll have the element of surprise, but we need to act quickly and decisively. The crew nodded, their expressions filled with determination. Let's show them what humanity can do, Mallory added, igniting a spark of motivation in the team. As the countdown to launch began, Adrien felt a rush of adrenaline. They were stepping into the unknown once more, but this time they were ready. Vera, initiate launch sequence, Adrien commanded. Launching in 3, 2, 1. Engaging, Vera announced, and the ship surged forward, propelled by its engines. They broke through the chaos of battle, a renewed sense of purpose fueling their every move. Adrien's heart raced as he focused on the Akraal command ship looming ahead, a dark behemoth in the void. Target the command ship's weapon systems, Adrien ordered. Let's ensure they can't retaliate. As the ship's weapons powered up, Adrien could feel the tension in the air. The crew was focused, their determination palpable. Firing, Adrien shouted as the ship's cannons erupted with energy, striking the command ship with precision. The impact rocked the enemy vessel, and Adrien felt a surge of exhilaration. They were making progress, but they had to keep the pressure on. Mallory, coordinate the scout ships, Adrien instructed, glancing at his friend. They need to flank the command ship while we draw its fire. On it, Mallory replied, rapidly communicating with the scouts as they moved into position. As the scout ships darted around the command ship, Engaging its defenses, Adrien focused on their main assault. They needed to create chaos and confusion, ensuring the Akraal were off balance. "Vera, how's the enemy responding?" Adrien asked, heart pounding in his chest. "The Akraal are scrambling to adjust their defenses," Vera reported. "We've successfully distracted them, but they're beginning to regroup. We need to act quickly." Adrien's mind raced as he considered their options. "Let's push forward and target their command deck directly. If we can breach their hull, we can initiate a boarding party." "Firing again," Adrien shouted, determination surging through him as the ship unleashed another barrage of fire. The explosions rocked the command ship, and Adrien felt a surge of hope. They were gaining ground, but they needed to keep the momentum going. "Mallory, I want you to lead the boarding party," Adrien said, his voice resolute. "You know the plan. If we can get inside, we can take out their command and disrupt their operations from within." "Understood," Mallory replied, steeling himself for the mission. "We'll make it count." As the ship drew closer to the command ship, Adrien felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This was the moment they had been waiting for. "Prepare for boarding," he commanded, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Vera, plot a course for the command deck." "Course plotted," Vera confirmed, her voice steady. "Initiating boarding protocols." The ship surged forward, and Adrien felt the rush of adrenaline as they broke through the Akraal's defenses. The chaos of battle surrounded them, but they had a singular focus: taking down the command ship. "Boarding party, ready your weapons," Mallory shouted, rallying their team. With a fierce determination, they prepared to engage the enemy. Adrien gripped his weapon tightly, heart pounding as they prepared to breach the enemy ship. "Go, go, go," Mallory shouted as they initiated the boarding procedure. The doors slid open, and they charged into the command deck, weapons raised and ready. The sight that greeted them was a mix of chaos and confusion. Akraal soldiers scrambled to respond, their eyes wide with surprise. "Take them out," Adrien shouted, leading the charge as they fought their way through the enemy ranks. Blaster fire erupted around them, but they pressed forward, fueled by the adrenaline of battle. The Akraal were powerful, but they were also disorganized, struggling to counter the unexpected assault. "Adrien, over here," Mallory called, pointing to a control panel. "We need to disable their communications." Adrien nodded, moving to the panel as blaster fire erupted around them. He focused on the controls, hands flying over the interface as he worked to disrupt their systems. "Vera, I need you to help me," Adrien shouted, adrenaline surging through him. "Engaging now," Vera responded, interfacing with the Akraal systems. As they worked together, Adrien felt a rush of exhilaration. They were on the brink of a breakthrough, but they had to keep the pressure on. "Hold the line," Mallory shouted, rallying their team as they pushed forward against the Akraal defenses. With one final push, Adrien managed to disable the communications array, sending a shockwave through the Akraal fleet. "Communications disabled," he yelled, a grin breaking across his face. "We did it." But their victory was short-lived. The remaining Akraal forces, realizing the dire situation, rallied for one final stand. "We need to get out of here," Mallory shouted, urgency lacing his voice. "They're regrouping." "Fall back," Adrien commanded, adrenaline pumping through his veins. "We have to regroup with the others." As they fought their way back through the command deck, Adrien's heart raced. They had accomplished their goal, but the battle was far from over. "Get to the hangar," Mallory shouted, leading the way. "We can regroup and strategize." Adrien followed closely, determination flooding through him. They would make it through this, and they would win. As they reached the hangar, the chaos of battle surged around them. Adrien felt a renewed sense of hope as they regrouped with their team. "Everyone, we've disrupted their command structure," Adrien announced, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Now we need to regroup and prepare for the final assault." The soldiers rallied around him, determination shining in their eyes. "We're with you, Lieutenant," one of them shouted, and a wave of camaraderie washed over the group. Adrien felt a surge of pride as they prepared for the next phase of their mission. They were ready to finish what they had started, and nothing would stand in their way. The hangar bay buzzed with activity as Adrien and the remaining soldiers prepared for the final assault against the Akraal forces. The adrenaline coursed through him as he took stock of their situation. They had disrupted the Akraal command ship, but the battle outside was still raging fiercely. He could hear the distant booms of explosions and the crackle of energy weapons. "Vera, what's the status of our fleet?" Adrien asked, strapping on his gear and ensuring his weapon was primed. "The majority of our remaining ships are engaged in combat with the Akraal forces," Vera replied, her voice steady amidst the chaos. "However, they are coordinating their efforts, and the Akraal are starting to regroup. We need to act quickly." Adrien exchanged a glance with Mallory, who was organizing their troops. "We need to exploit the window we've created. If we can hit their remaining vessels before they can fully recover, we might turn the tide of this battle." "Agreed," Mallory said, his eyes gleaming with determination. "We have to ensure we don't give them a moment to breathe. I'll lead the boarding party again. We'll take as many ships as we can." "I'll go with you," Adrien insisted, his resolve firm. "We're in this together, and I want to be there to support you." Mallory nodded, respect evident in his gaze. "Let's gather the remaining forces and formulate a plan. We can't afford to lose our momentum." As they rallied their troops, Adrien could feel a sense of unity building among the soldiers. They had faced insurmountable odds and come through together. Now, with their mission clear, they felt invincible. "Listen up, everyone," Adrien called, raising his voice to cut through the noise of the hangar. "We've disrupted the Akraal command structure, and they're vulnerable. Our goal is to board their ships and take them out one by one. This is our chance to strike a decisive blow. We fight for each other, for humanity, and for our survival." A roar of agreement erupted from the soldiers, their spirits ignited by his words. Adrien felt a swell of pride. They were ready to fight, to reclaim their future. "Let's move out," Mallory commanded, leading the way as they boarded their ships. The hangar doors opened with a hiss, revealing the chaos of battle outside. Adrien strapped himself into his seat, feeling the familiar rush of anticipation. The scout ships, nimble and agile, darted through the battlefield, weaving between enemy fire as they headed toward the nearest Akraal vessel. "Vera, can you sync our navigational systems with the fleet?" Adrien asked, adrenaline pumping through his veins. "Already on it," Vera replied, her tone sharp. "We're plotting the optimal course for engagement." As they flew into the heart of the battle, Adrien's heart raced. The Akraal ships loomed ahead, dark silhouettes against the stars, and he could see the chaotic melee of combat unfolding. "Prepare for engagement," Adrien commanded, gripping the controls tightly. The ship surged forward, weapons primed and ready. "Engaging now!" Mallory shouted, his voice filled with adrenaline as they opened fire on the nearest Akraal ship. The blasts hit their mark, the enemy vessel erupting in a shower of debris. Adrien felt a rush of satisfaction. They were making a difference, fighting back against the tide of despair. "Let's board them," Mallory yelled, directing the pilot to maneuver closer. "We can't let them regroup." With a determined roar, they closed the distance, launching boarding pods toward the stricken Akraal vessel. The pods slammed into the hull with a resounding crash, and the soldiers burst out, weapons raised and ready. Adrien led the charge, adrenaline surging through him. They poured into the ship's interior, blaster fire erupting around them as they encountered Akraal defenders. "Push forward," Adrien shouted, adrenaline coursing through his veins as they advanced. The soldiers fought with fierce determination, each member of the team focused on their mission. They pressed deeper into the enemy ship, blasting through corridors filled with hostile Akraal soldiers. Each encounter felt like a dance of chaos, a mix of blaster fire and shouted commands as they pushed onward. "Watch your flanks," Mallory shouted, gunning down an enemy soldier who had attempted to flank them. Adrien felt a surge of camaraderie as they fought side by side. every member of the team working in unison. They were more than just soldiers. They were a family, united in their fight for survival. "Clear the deck," Adrien commanded, leading the charge into a larger chamber filled with Akraal troops. The battle was fierce, but they held their ground, pushing the enemy back until they were forced to retreat. "We're securing this ship," Adrien yelled, his heart pounding in his chest. "Let's disable their systems." With precision and urgency, they moved to the command center of the ship, where the Akraal were attempting to regroup. Adrien took point, moving with Mallory and a few soldiers as they advanced toward the control consoles. "Vera, can you access their systems from here?" Adrien asked, sweat dripping down his brow. "I can interface with their controls and disable key systems," Vera replied. "Give me a moment to establish a connection." Adrien felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. This was their opportunity to disrupt the Akraal operations from within. "Cover me," he shouted, ducking behind a console as blaster fire erupted around them. The soldiers rallied, providing covering fire as Adrien focused on the controls. Come on," he muttered under his breath, fingers flying over the console. Vera's interface hummed as she worked her magic. "I'm in," Vera exclaimed. "Initiating shutdown protocols now." As alarms blared around them, Adrien could see the Akraal forces scrambling to regain control. The chaos was palpable, and he felt a rush of adrenaline as they fought to maintain their advantage. "Hold the line," Mallory shouted, pushing back against the Akraal soldiers who were trying to break through. The air was thick with tension as Adrien fought against the oncoming tide, feeling the urgency of the moment. They had to hold their ground. "Vera, how much longer?" Adrien shouted over the din of battle. "Almost there, just a few more seconds," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. Finally, the control panel flickered as Vera initiated a lockdown on the Akraal ship. "I've secured their systems. They're unable to communicate or call for reinforcements." A roar of triumph erupted from their team, and Adrien felt a wave of hope wash over him. They had done it. They had crippled the Akraal vessel. "Let's finish this," Adrien shouted, rallying the troops. "We need to take down any remaining forces and secure this ship." With renewed determination, they surged forward, pushing through the remaining Akraal soldiers and securing the ship. Each victory fueled their resolve, and they could feel the tide of the battle beginning to shift. As they pushed through the last remnants of resistance, Adrien felt a sense of accomplishment building within him. They had fought fiercely, and they were making a difference. "Let's get to the control center and take command," Mallory called, urgency lacing his voice. They fought their way to the bridge of the Akraal ship, where they found the remaining crew scrambling to respond. "Charge," Adrien shouted, leading the charge as they burst into the control center. The Akraal crew was taken by surprise, and the ensuing battle was swift and brutal. Adrien's heart raced as they fought, their training kicking in as they pushed back against the enemy. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they emerged victorious, standing amidst the wreckage of the control center. "Secure the ship," Adrien ordered, adrenaline still pumping through him. "We need to regroup with the fleet and inform them of our success." As they moved to take control of the ship, Adrien felt a sense of pride swelling within him. They had faced the Akraal together, and they had won. "Vera, can you relay our status to the fleet?" Adrien asked, breathing heavily from the exertion. "Establishing communication now," she replied, her tone crisp and efficient. "Broadcasting our success." As they waited for a response, Adrien reflected on their journey. They had faced insurmountable odds and come out stronger on the other side. Humanity had proven its resilience once more. "Adrien, we're receiving a transmission," Vera announced. "The fleet is acknowledging our success and preparing for a coordinated offensive against the remaining Akraal forces." A wave of relief washed over Adrien. They were not alone in this fight. The rest of humanity was standing with them. "Let's rejoin the fleet," Adrien commanded, determination sparking anew. "We've got more work to do." The atmosphere on the bridge of the commandeered Akraal ship was thick with tension. Adrien stood at the helm, gazing out into the chaotic expanse of space where the remnants of the Akraal Armada swirled like a tempest. In the distance, he could see the flickering lights of Allied ships, some already engaging the enemy in fierce dogfights, while others were regrouping and preparing for a coordinated offensive. "Vera, what's the status of our forces?" Adrien asked, his heart pounding with anticipation. "Out of the 25 ships that initially engaged the Akraal, we have 16 still operational," she reported, her voice steady even as alarms blared intermittently around them. "However, many are heavily damaged. They'll need repairs before they can continue to fight effectively." Adrien clenched his jaw. They had already faced tremendous losses, but they were not about to let that deter them. "We have to act fast. If we allow the Akraal to regroup, we'll lose the advantage we've gained. Can you link our systems with the fleet's command?" "Establishing connection now," Vera replied, her fingers flying over the control console. "I'll sync our tactical displays with theirs. This will give us a clearer picture of the battlefield." The image of the battle unfolded on the screen, showing the various positions of Allied and enemy ships. Adrien's heart sank as he noticed the clustering of Akraal vessels near their command ship, clearly attempting to re-establish some form of order. "Look!" Mallory shouted, pointing at the display. "They're attempting to concentrate their firepower. If they manage to regroup, they could overwhelm our forces. We need to split their focus." Adrien nodded, his mind racing. "We'll execute a feint. Vera, can we launch a decoy from our position that will draw their attention away?" "Absolutely," she confirmed, her voice steady. "I can program one of the Akraal shuttles to simulate a distress signal. It'll attract their ships toward the outer sector." "Good. Prepare it for launch," Adrien commanded, feeling the adrenaline surge through him. "And then, we'll hit them with everything we've got from both flanks. We need to keep them occupied." Mallory stepped closer, the fire of battle igniting his eyes. "And if they send reinforcements our way?" Adrien met his gaze, steely determination shining through. "Then we'll face them head-on. Humanity doesn't back down. Not now, not ever." With the plan set, Vera worked swiftly, programming the shuttle to send out a distress signal that echoed through the Akraal communication channels. Adrien watched as the ship moved away from their position, heading toward the void where it would create the illusion of an easy target. "Launching decoy in 3, 2, 1, now," Vera announced. The shuttle shot out into space, broadcasting its signal. Almost immediately, the Akraal vessels began shifting their positions, focusing on the perceived threat. Adrien's heart raced as he observed the tactical map, watching as their numbers diminished in the direction of the decoy. "Now," Adrien shouted, "let's engage." They pushed the commandeered Akraal ship forward, its weapons blazing as they opened fire on the enemy vessels. The surprise attack sent shockwaves through the Akraal fleet, disrupting their formation and creating openings for Allied ships to exploit. "Flank them from both sides," Mallory yelled, coordinating with the other ships as they dove into the fray. "Let's keep them on their toes." Adrien maneuvered their ship through the chaos, feeling the thrill of battle surge within him. They were taking the fight to the enemy, and every shot fired felt like a retribution for all they had lost. Suddenly, a warning blared across the console, snapping him back to reality. "Incoming fire!" Vera shouted. "2 enemy vessels are locking onto us." "Evasive maneuvers," Adrien commanded, gripping the controls tightly as he piloted the ship to evade the incoming shots. The ship swerved sharply, narrowly dodging a volley of blaster fire that passed ominously close. "Shields holding," Vera called out, her focus unwavering. "But they're regenerating their energy. We need to take out those ships fast." With a determined roar, Adrien pressed the attack. "Let's disable their engines. If we can immobilize them, we can focus on the others." The ship shuddered as they unleashed another barrage of fire, hitting one of the enemy vessels directly in its engine array. It exploded in a brilliant flash, sending debris scattering across the battlefield. "Target the second ship," Mallory shouted, and Adrien felt a fierce surge of pride. They were a well-oiled machine, each member of the team knowing their role. As they pressed the attack, Adrien caught a glimpse of something stirring in the corner of his eye, a massive Akraal battleship emerging from behind a cluster of asteroids. Panic gripped his heart. "They're bringing in reinforcements," he shouted. "We need to cut off that battleship before it can join the fray." Vera's fingers danced across the console, recalibrating their weapons. "I'll coordinate with the fleet and target the battleship first. We have to take it down before it can unleash its full firepower." "Do it," Adrien commanded, adrenaline flooding his veins as he focused on the new threat. "Aim for their weapons array. We can't let them unleash their full fire." The ship angled toward the massive battleship, its imposing structure dark against the stars. Adrien felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. This was their chance to shift the balance of power. "Firing now," Vera announced, and the ship's cannons roared to life, sending a volley of energy blast toward the Akraal battleship. The shots connected, tearing into its hull and causing the ship to shudder violently. But as they prepared to launch another round, Adrien realized something was wrong. The battleship had activated its shields, and their attacks were deflected harmlessly into space. "They're reinforcing their shields," Vera exclaimed, her voice tense. "We'll need to hit them harder to breach their defenses." Adrien gritted his teeth, realizing they needed to change their strategy. "Can we target any weak points on their hull? Any exposed sections?" Vera's gaze shifted to the tactical display. "There's a small gap near the aft. If we can maneuver to that position, we might have a chance." "Then let's get there," Adrien commanded, urging the ship into action. Time is of the essence. With a fierce determination, they navigated through the fray, dodging enemy fire as they approached the weak point on the battleship. Adrien felt every heartbeat resonating with urgency as they drew closer. "Brace for impact," he shouted as they reached their target. "Fire everything we have." The ship's cannons roared, unleashing a concentrated barrage of energy blast aimed directly at the weak point. The shots connected with devastating force, tearing through the hull and igniting a cascade of explosions. "Yes," Mallory cheered, adrenaline surging. "We've breached their defenses." "Keep firing," Adrien shouted, feeling the tide of battle shifting in their favor. "We can't let up now." The Akraal battleship began to break apart, its systems failing as fires erupted across its surface. The surrounding Akraal vessels faltered, confusion spreading through their ranks as the tide began to turn. "Look," Vera shouted, pointing at the tactical display. "The remaining Akraal ships are retreating." A roar of triumph erupted from the crew, and Adrien felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. They had turned the tide. "Regroup with the fleet," Adrien commanded, his heart pounding with the thrill of victory. "We need to pursue and ensure they don't regroup." As they flew through the debris of the battle, Adrien reflected on the journey they had taken together. From their harrowing escape to this moment of triumph, they had faced insurmountable odds and emerged stronger. The last remnants of the Akraal fleet began to disperse, their ships retreating into the darkness of space. It was a sight that filled Adrien with hope. Humanity had proven once again that they could withstand any storm. "Adrien," Mallory shouted, pulling him from his thoughts. "The fleet is hailing us. They want to congratulate us on our success." With a grin, Adrien accepted the transmission, his heart swelling with pride. They had not only survived, but had triumphed against overwhelming odds. As the familiar faces of the fleet's command appeared on the screen, Adrien felt a sense of unity and purpose. They had fought together, lost together, and now they would rebuild together. "We stand as one," he declared, a fierce determination lighting his eyes. "For humanity and for our future." The aftermath of the battle hung in the air like the stillness following a storm. Adrien stood on the bridge of the commandeered Akraal ship, the remnants of the fight still visible in the star-speckled void beyond. Their victory over the Akraal Armada had been hard won, but it was a turning point, a testament to humanity's resilience in the face of annihilation. "Admiral Carter wants to meet with you," Vera announced, breaking the contemplative silence that had settled over the bridge. Adrien nodded, his heart racing at the thought of addressing the Admiral. The fleet had suffered substantial losses, but they had also gained invaluable intelligence on the Akraal's strategies and capabilities. This victory could pave the way for a more organized defense against future incursions. "Put him through," Adrien replied, taking a deep breath to steady himself. The Admiral's stern face appeared on the screen, framed by the insignia of the United Earth Fleet. "Lieutenant Cadden, you have done the impossible today. Your actions not only turned the tide of battle, but inspired our forces to fight back against the Akraal. I commend you and your crew for your bravery." "Thank you, Admiral," Adrien replied, his chest swelling with pride. "But it was a team effort. I couldn't have done it without Vera, Mallory, and the rest of the crew." "I'm fully aware of that," Admiral Carter said, his expression softening momentarily. "But this victory has given us a critical window. We must capitalize on it before the Akraal can regroup and counterattack." Adrien's mind raced with the implications. "What do you propose?" "We need to launch a series of scouting missions to gather intelligence on the remaining fleets and establish a forward operating base," the Admiral suggested. "Your ship will be instrumental in that operation." Adrien's heart sank momentarily as he realized the weight of the responsibility. "Understood, sir. We'll do whatever it takes." "Good," the Admiral replied, nodding decisively. "I want you to prepare your crew for deployment. We can't afford to lose the momentum we've gained. I'll send over the latest tactical data." "Yes, sir," Adrien said, determination hardening in his chest. As the communication ended, he turned to Vera and Mallory, who were both watching him expectantly. "It looks like we're not done yet," Adrien said, his voice steady. "We have a new mission. We'll gather intel on the Akraal's movements and set up a base to strengthen our defense." Mallory grinned, the spirit of the fight still radiating from him. "Let's make sure they know humanity isn't to be trifled with." Vera nodded, her eyes gleaming with resolve. "I'll start prepping the systems and ensure we're fully stocked for a long deployment." As they went about their preparations, Adrien felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were not just surviving, they were becoming a formidable force in the galaxy. Hours turned into days as the crew worked tirelessly, gathering intelligence and repairing their ship. Adrien often found himself reflecting on the chaos of the previous battles, the fear and uncertainty that had gripped him. But now he felt the adrenaline of hope fueling their efforts. "Adrien, take a look at this," Vera called from her console, her tone laced with urgency. He moved to her side, peering over the tactical display. "What's up?" "I've been analyzing the data we captured from the Akraal. It looks like they have a hidden staging area near the asteroid field in the Zethar system," she explained, her finger tracing the outlined map. "If we hit them there, we could severely disrupt their reinforcements." Adrien's mind raced with the possibilities. "Can we coordinate an ambush with the fleet?" "Absolutely. We'll need to act fast, though," Vera warned. "If we give them time, they'll fortify their defenses." "We'll move quickly. Prepare a strike plan and get the fleet on board," he ordered, adrenaline surging through him. "This could be our best shot to hit them where it hurts." Days later, the fleet gathered near the Zethar system, ships arrayed in formation, each one bristling with anticipation. Adrien stood at the helm of the commandeered Akraal ship, his heart racing as he took in the sight of his fellow humans, determined to make a stand. "Commence the strike," Admiral Carter's voice boomed over the comms, and Adrien felt a fierce thrill course through him. This was it, the moment they had fought for. The ship surged forward, cutting through the blackness of space like arrows loosed from a bow. Adrien's focus narrowed, his senses sharpening as they approached the hidden Akraal base nestled within the asteroid field. "Engaging cloak," Vera announced. "We'll be undetectable until we're right on top of them." As the ship glided silently through the asteroids, Adrien's heart pounded in his chest. The tension was palpable, Each crew member focused on their task as they neared the enemy stronghold. "Activating weapon systems," Vera reported, her fingers flying over the console. "All systems ready." "Let's make this count," Adrien replied, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. Suddenly, their ship shuddered as the Akraal base came into view. Massive structures loomed among the asteroids, and Adrien could see the faint glimmers of energy shields flickering around the perimeter. "Time to make our entrance," he declared, a fierce determination igniting within him. "Open fire." The ship erupted with energy blasts, striking the shields and causing them to shimmer violently. Adrien watched as explosions erupted across the base, scattering debris and sending Akraal ships scrambling. "Enemy ships launching," Mallory shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to hold them off while we take out their defenses." Adrien's heart raced as they engaged in the ferocious battle, their weapons roaring to life as they pushed forward. The Akraal ships swarmed like hornets, but the crew fought back with tenacity, refusing to back down. "Keep pushing. We need to get to the core of their base," Adrien shouted, adrenaline coursing through him as he steered the ship through the chaos. With each passing moment, the battle intensified. They fought valiantly, taking down enemy ships and disrupting the base's operations. But as they pressed deeper into enemy territory, Adrien felt a nagging sense of urgency. "Vera, can you get us a read on their command center?" he asked, his voice laced with intensity. "Working on it," she replied, her focus unwavering. "If we can take out their command center, we can cripple their entire operation." Finally, Vera's eyes lit up. "There, I've located it 3 levels down, heavily fortified. We'll need to breach the shields to get inside." "Can we use the chaos to our advantage?" Adrien questioned, scanning the battlefield. "If we divert their attention—" "Leave that to me," Vera interjected, her voice steady. "I'll trigger a power surge in their systems to create a distraction." "Do it," Adrien commanded, adrenaline surging as he piloted the ship toward the command center. As they approached, the ship shuddered with the impact of enemy fire, but Adrien pressed on. Vera activated the surge, and suddenly the Akraal base erupted in chaos. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and confusion reigned among the Akraal forces. "Now, go, go, go!" Adrien shouted, leading the charge toward the command center. They plunged into the heart of the enemy stronghold, navigating the chaos as they fought their way through. Adrien's heart raced as they reached the entrance to the command center, a massive door that loomed before them. "Get ready," Mallory yelled, and Adrien felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. With a fierce determination, they breached the doors, charging into the command center, weapons at the ready. The Akraal forces inside were caught off guard, but they quickly scrambled to defend their stronghold. "Secure the area," Adrien shouted, firing into the fray as chaos erupted. "We need to take control." The crew fought valiantly, pushing deeper into the command center. Adrien felt the weight of the moment settle over him. They were about to strike a decisive blow against their enemies. With every ounce of strength, they pressed on until they reached the central control panel. Adrien felt a sense of exhilaration wash over him as he approached the controls. "Vera, can you access their systems?" he asked, urgency lacing his voice. "On it," she replied, her fingers flying over the panel. "I can initiate a self-destruct sequence for the entire base." "Do it," Adrien commanded, adrenaline surging as he felt the ground tremble beneath them. The control panel whirred to life, and Adrien's heart raced as Vera worked her magic. Initiating sequence in 3, 2, 1. The room shook violently, alarms blaring as the countdown began. "We need to get out of here," Mallory shouted, urgency propelling him forward. Adrien grabbed Vera's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "Let's move." As they fled the command center, explosions erupted behind them, the base crumbling as they raced through the chaos. The sounds of battle echoed in their ears, but they pressed on, determination guiding their steps. "Get to the ship," Adrien shouted, adrenaline surging as they navigated the debris-filled corridors. They burst through the exit and sprinted toward their ship, the ground shaking with each passing moment. The Akraal forces were in disarray, but they wouldn't stop fighting. "Cover me," Mallory yelled, taking up a defensive position as Adrien and Vera climbed aboard their ship. "Let's go," Adrien shouted, his heart pounding as he punched in the launch sequence. The ship roared to life, engines igniting as they prepared for takeoff. With a final glance at the chaos behind them, Adrien felt a surge of determination. They were not just surviving, they were fighting back. As the ship broke free from the crumbling base, explosions erupted in their wake, the Akraal command center collapsing into a fiery inferno. Adrien let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding, feeling the weight of victory settle over him. "We did it!" Vera exclaimed, her eyes shining with triumph. "We took them down." Adrien felt a wave of pride wash over him. They had struck a blow against the Akraal, and it was a victory that would echo throughout the galaxy. "Now we regroup with the fleet," he declared, determination lighting his eyes. "We'll continue the fight. This is only the beginning." As they soared into the vastness of space, Adrien felt a sense of purpose renew within him. They were more than survivors. They were warriors, fighting for the future of humanity. And as they navigated through the stars, Adrien knew that together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead.